Hello, lords and ladies. Welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. This show has always been such a joy to watch, but I will admit that episode 14, Princess Fragrance, was a breath of fresh air, which is ironic considering the villain and subject matter of the episode in question. This episode breaks away from the standard fare of the series and gives us an episode where Ladybug is forced to combat an Akuma without her powers or her Kwami, and in doing so gives us an incredibly exciting and funny episode in the process. I mean, just look at her makeshift superhero disguise.
Hey, got a pizza for Chloe Bourgeois.
It's usually sushi. Top floor, Imperial Suite.
I can just imagine her saying, "I'm here to deliver pizza and a butt whooping, and I'm all out of pizza." But let's back up a little bit. Somehow Tiki has managed to get sick, whether she contracted a human sickness or she's just been overworked fighting Akuma remains unanswered in this episode. But I could definitely see elements of this episode's plot factoring into future ones, even if such a thing hasn't usually been the show's style of storytelling thus far. One such plot point in this episode that felt far too specific to be simply a reference or a throwaway moment was the healer that Marinette took Tiki to. It's made clear that he knows what a Kwami is, so I have to ask, will we see this man again? What does his mentioning of China have to do with Ladybug or Tiki? And is it just me, or does he look an awful lot like Mr. Miyagi from the Karate Kid? Again, I'm hoping there's actually something more to this character, but I won't hold out any hope. As for the villain this time around, we get the incredibly oddly designed Princess Fragrance, aka Poor Doe-Eyed Rose. If there's anything negative about this otherwise delightful episode, it would be her. I'm going to be honest with you, and admit that this particular character has never been my favorite. Her eyes are just so freaking huge for her head, and I get it, there are art styles out there that use this, but hers doesn't work. While all the other characters do have fairly large eyes as well, I feel as if hers are way larger than even theirs. And don't get me started on her nasally voice. It's as if I'm watching The Nanny all over again. The only positive thing about that voice is that it works surprisingly well for her villainous persona.
My friends, smell the fragrance of my eternal love.
I mentioned she was oddly designed, but that mostly has to do with her skin color. It's green. I'm not sure if that's meant to represent the green stem of a rose or a witch. I suppose the former makes the most sense, but out of all the villain designs we've seen thus far, I feel this one is certainly one of the weakest. However, I do dig the dress a little bit, and how her hair makes you think of a perfume bottle. Other than that, I can't think of anything else nice to say about her. The best part of this episode is easily watching Marinette act heroically despite losing her ability to transform. It reminds me of old episodes where the Power Rangers had to fight without their powers. Admittedly, they didn't fare as well as Marinette did, who managed to outthink Princess Fragrance several times. This is the fresh breath of air I was talking about. Every so often, you need to shake things up and offer your viewers a somewhat different viewing experience. I think this was it. We're able to see that Marinette is heroic, even without powers, and is quite capable of saving the day. She does, of course, end up as Ladybug again, and with the assistance of Cat Noir, who kind of takes a back seat in this episode, is able to put things back the way they were. To close this review out, I do want to point out once again that I am becoming slightly restless with Hawkmoth's position in the series. To go back to my Power Rangers reference, he is essentially the Rita of the series. He sticks solely to his tower, sending wave after wave of minions to get what he wants. And I think that can work for a while, as it did for Power Rangers, but then you need to send him down to get his hands dirty and take care of matters himself, or do something, switch things up. Perhaps the writers are saving that for a climactic and possibly dramatic season finale, and it definitely would work, on paper at least. I just personally want to see the show utilize this villain in a different way that we've seen him. For all I've said about this episode being such a breath of fresh air, it is ironic that one of the stalest parts of it have to do with the overarching bad guy. And that's it from me. Now it's time for you to let me hear your thoughts on this episode down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and take care. Hello, lords and ladies. Welcome back to Cartoon Hangout, your place for all things cartoon. This episode was pretty hilarious. maybe the funniest episode thus far in the series. At first, I figured this episode was going to have a huge cringe factor, because I've never been able to sit still during episodes with the premise of this one. And that's in reference to Nino being coached on how to approach Marinette, while she's being coached by Alia to talk to Adrian, who isn't actually there. Well, you've seen the episode, so I don't really need to paint you a picture. My initial problem with the setup for the episode was that we'd gotten zero hints as to Nino's crush on Marinette. But in writing this review, I understand it could have just really happened recently. In fact, Nino almost says as much in the episode. So what started off seemingly rocky for me gave us probably some of the best comedic moments in the series to date, and I think that's saying something. The villain of this episode is Animan, or Animan, or however you pronounce it, and as powers go, he's nothing special. He's basically Beast Boy from Teen Titans. For the first time, I think, in this series so far, I was not really greatly entertained by the central conflict of this episode. Animan just, I don't know, wasn't really that interesting or amazing of a character. He can turn into any animal he wants, and he does make decent use of those powers throughout the episode, but it's not until the last third of the episode that he amps it up and turns into a freaking dinosaur. If he'd been using his powers a little more creatively before that moment, maybe I'd have liked him as a villain more. I think the only decent thing to come out of that confrontation was when Cat Noir thought Ladybug had been eaten, and when she turned out to not have been eaten, he hugged her instead of doing their usual pound it.
Pound it?
Ladybug! That was a wild ride.
So cute. Also, was it just me, or did he seem to linger on a picture of Marinette and her family a bit too long? There's been times that I wondered if he's becoming suspicious of her identity, but I'm probably wrong and I'm reading too much into it. Either way, despite a lackluster villain, I did really enjoy this episode thanks to the comedic subplot involving Nino and Alia. It was really funny. Let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments below, and for future reference, these reviews of Ladybug tend to go up on Mondays. Usually reviews are up a day after an episode premieres, but because I don't upload videos on Sundays anymore, that means the reviews are 2 days after the episode premieres. I hope that helps. Thanks for watching, and take care.